Hey, you guys. My name is John Harris. I'm in criminal justice 3310, organized and consensual crime. I think it's really fascinating to study Mexican cartels and in Latin America organized crime groups. I was going to do my paper on MS-13, but instead I decided to do my paper on some Mexican cartels. Specifically, I researched the Sinaloa and the Gulf Cartel. Also looked into, researched a little bit into the group called Las Zetas. I'll explain more about them in a few minutes. But especially recently, we've seen Mexican cartels really dominating uh, the politics and everything else in Mexico. It seems that they really just can't figure out a solution to this problem. So I decided to research that, and that's what my paper is about. Um, so I went into a little bit of detail about the history of a few of these different cartels, kind of the structures, and I also looked into the corruption that is involved in some of the cartels. Um, so the first one I looked into was the Sinaloa cartel. It's one of the better known organizations. Forgive me for pronouncing these incorrectly. Joaquin, El Chapo, Guzman, Loria, and Ismael El Mayo Abada Garcia are the current leaders of the Sinaloa cartel, and we all know, and we've all heard of El Chapo. So he's currently one of the leaders of the Sinaloa cartel, and also a couple of brothers known as the Beltran Leyva brothers. They were also involved in leadership positions in the Sinaloa cartel, and of course I'll get into that here in a few minutes. So the Sinaloa cartel was founded back in the 1970s, and it saw a really big growth spurt in the 1970s because the Colombian cartels were using the Caribbean to smuggle in cocaine, and we've all heard and have learned about that. But once the U.S. authorities figured out how to contain that and how to effectively stop that a certain trafficking route, the Colombian cartels were forced to go up through Latin America and through Mexico to get across the border to get all the cocaine into the United States, and that's when the Sinaloa cartel and that's when a lot of other cartels really started to become profitable and big. The man responsible for getting the Sinaloa cartel into the cocaine trafficking business is a man named Alberto Cecilia Falcon. He describes himself as a flamboyant bisexual who makes a big splash in the capital's social circles. Cecilia Falcon befriended Juan Ramon Mata Ballesteros, a shrewd Honduran chemist who introduced the Cuban to Medellin boss Pablo Escobar. And so through that relationship is how the Sinaloa cartel got involved in smuggling cocaine across the border into the United States. Alberto Cecilia Falcon was arrested in 1975, so somebody had to fill that void that he left. A Mexican gangster by the name of Guzman Loeria, which is El Chapo, he took over that role, and he did it very well. He rose to the top in regards to prosperous underworld figures. So in the 1980s, that's when they cut off the supply routes into Florida and into Miami specifically. So El Chapo found alternate routes from Mexico across the border into Texas and into other border states. He's credited with constructing a very sophisticated tunnel from Tijuana to Otto Mesa, California. It had all the amenities. It had It had air conditioning. It was concrete reinforced and it was 1,500 feet long. So he's kind of the one that started these very sophisticated tunnels from Mexico into the United States in order to get the product through. He was arrested in Guatemala in 2003, and he was sentenced to 20 years on charges of smuggling and bribery. Of course, in their prison system, he was able to continue to conduct transactions from a luxurious cell. He entertained prostitutes and spoke with Dan Rather and other media mavens. He was scheduled for extradition to the United States, but just before he made a miraculous escape from this maximum security prison. Somehow all of the prison cells just flew open and the camera stopped recording all at the same time, so I'm sure that a lot of people had something to do with that. In 2007, El Chapo became very upset with the Beltran Leyva brothers because they wanted to establish a separate cartel. And after learning that the brothers had made a deal with Los Zetas to split up El Chapo's territory, he became very upset, and he framed a lady by the name of Sandra Avila Beltran. She's a relative of the brothers, and so he framed her for a specific crime. And she was arrested in September of 2007, and also so was one of the brothers soon after that, in the start of 2008, in January 2008. So the brothers felt that they were betrayed by El Chapo, and so they started working with the Gulf Cartel, because the enemy of your enemy is your friend. And so that's when they started working with the Gulf Cartel in order to wage war against El Chapo. So speaking of the Gulf Cartel, it's one of the bigger rivals of the Sinaloa Cartel, and as the name implies, it controls a very large portion of eastern Mexico alongside the Gulf of Mexico there. So the reason that they became such a big cartel is the same reason the Sinaloa Cartel became so big, is because of the cocaine smuggling business and how that route was blocked, so they had to find another alternate route into the United States. So that brings me to the Los Zetas. The Los Zetas are a very, very intimidating, very merciless group. You kind of call them mercenaries, and then they're hired mainly by the Gulf Cartel to do the dirty work, essentially, if you will. Says what makes the Zetas unique, however, is that they operate as a private army for the Gulf Cartel. For both Mexican and U.S. authorities, the Zetas are the most dangerous paramilitary group in Mexico because of their willingness to shoot and kill law enforcement officers. They engage in every single kind of activity. They kidnap, they traffic weapons, launder money, deal drugs, they collect taxes, and they kind of work the same as the mafia that we've studied in this class. They've got a three-tier system. They've got the leaders at the top, the middlemen, and they kind of have the foot soldiers that they kind of do all the dirty work. And they were created in the late 90s when a group of officers deserted from the army. They were especially trained to combat the drug trafficking groups or whatever. So now they're involved in a lot of the violence that's seen in these drug wars. The corruption is a real big issue as well. It says the municipal police in Nuevo Laredo, for example, are reportedly involved in kidnapping competitors of the Gulf Cartel and handing them over to the Zetas. The Zetas either hold them for ransom or torture them to find out information about their drug operations. So that was just a little bit about a couple of the drug cartels in Mexico and a little bit to do with the corruption and the issues that are at hand. Thank you.